Who is Marco Brien and what is your backstory?
Marco Brien is a work in progress. Uh, he's he's a guy who's very lucky to be where he is. He's a guy who thought he was going to be in a number of other places, um, but was lucky enough to be able to follow the signs that were put on his path and wound up where he is. So I am absolutely positive I'm right where I belong.
Thanks for that. EPEC's got her hand up. Oh, you do not? Oh, Phil Williams. I'm sorry. EPEC, that was Phil calling up.
Well, EPEC and I do look alike, so maybe just kind of, I don't know. So, Mark, I remember the very first conversation that you and I had, and I think it was on the bench, and there was a question that you posed about, I guess, needing to say something to a friend or having some kind of conversation. And I remember you asking, or you making the statement, well, I don't really know what I need to do or what I should do. And I remember very clearly saying to you, yes, you do. It's already in you and you know what you need to say. So given that, here's my question to you. What do you treasure the most, or what is your favorite thing about being a husband, a father, a sibling, a leader, and most recently, a substitute rotating host for the bench, a friend, a writer, someone that passes somebody by about in the grocery store? What's your favorite thing about being those things? And it could be one thing, it could be one answer, but I just thought I'd kind of put that in some kind of order so that you can answer that question for us.
I think it's one answer that has about 1 million evolving implications, and the answer is learning. I just feel like if I'm in a situation or exposed to something or in a conversation or get to know people, raise children, run a company, whatever, I'd better be learning, because there's just no, well, that's not true. I was going to say there's no way in the world that you can know everything. I suspect some people think they do know everything. I would suggest they're not correct. And I think if they let that belief preclude their learning, they're definitely depriving themselves, and they're likely depriving others around them. And I'll just throw in here as one example. I know for a fact that I learned from every conversation with Dan, my wife, and I know for a fact that I learned from every conversation I have with my two sons, Sean and Quinn. And I learn from every conversation I have with my 4 grandchildren, who are already a whole lot smarter than I am.
Awesome. I forgot you were a grandfather.
Yes, sir. I love the question. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Phil. Richard. Richard, you're on mute.
There we go. Just a question of what your comment on knowing and learning, and one definition I came across quite a few years ago was intuition, and I looked it up. This was 2:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm doing creative work for a good friend and good client of mine, and he asked me the question, "How do you know how to do all this stuff?" And he said, "Well, I'm an intuitive." Well, what the heck does that mean? So we look it up on the spot, Mac Dictionary, no prior knowledge or experience. That's a legitimate definition for intuitive. So just wondering, what's your take on being in that state of mind that provides the answers as and when you need them?
I think the only situation in which I've been intuitively comfortable, believe this or not, was as a parent of young sons. I don't know how or why, but it just seemed commonsensible to me. And I just felt intuitively capable. In every other situation, I don't know that it's so. I don't know that I operate so much from intuition as I do from. I guess I'm going to have to say learning again. From learning whatever I can about the circumstances that I'm in, and also I would say learning to trust my judgment. And part of that is learning that it's not and never will be infallible. So I think there's, in all likelihood, a connection to vulnerability there. Because I'm not sure you can concede infallibility without being vulnerable. But I think that's the answer. I was instantly comfortable as a parent. Not sure why.
Well, that's your innate wisdom speaking up for yourself.
I'll take that. Thank you. I would never swear that you were correct, but I'll take it. Thank you. I always tell my wife in situations like this, just take the points. Just take the
Yeah.
points.
Well, what's interesting is one of my longtime dear friends and also a client was a man who had experienced enlightenment in 1973, and I had the very good fortune of not only being his graphic designer, I was also a good friend, which that was the cherished relationship between him and me. And when you look at how his influence from that point of view of being a wide open plane, and we are basically open vessels to being receptive to whatever experience flows through our consciousness. So it was quite a interesting, eye-opening experience. I was insecure as I was growing up, but I had an aha moment. I'm okay, which is actually the focus of a chapter that I wrote in a book that's entitled "The Power of Self-Discovery," and that was an aha moment for me that I realized at 23, despite what I may have thought about myself, I was perfectly fine. Thank you. And that
Yeah,
just led to it was the fuel for taking on the unknown with really no question, or there's still a sense of insecurity, because there would be times when this friend of mine we'd be gathering every Friday night, and he would encourage us to engage each other and share what we know, because it was through the course of sharing that you learned about, again, there's that word learning, that you learned about our experience here in the world of form. And but a lot of the lessons that he gave were in the formless nature of our existence in the world of form, which was talked about the illusion, space, time, and matter. And I can totally relate to those. So thanks for being our honored orator today and sharing of yourself.
thank you.
Thanks, Richard. We've got EPEC.
Hi. Hello,
Hi.
Mark.
Hi.
So my question to you is twofold. The first one is, if I would ask you like 3 things that give you most joy in life, what would you say? And my other question is, can you share with us a side of you or something you do, you be, that not too many people knows about you?
Mm-hmm.
So joy and something that not too many people know about you.
Oh, I think the three things that, well, not the three things that bring me joy are, I'm going to have to say being married to Anne, because that was a very, very long time coming. I didn't meet Anne until I was 60, and thank God I did. Writing, certainly, and music. There's just there's something magical about music. And if I hadn't started the fire in that fireplace over there, you would see guitars behind me. And the truth about those is I don't have the courage to sell them, because I know if I did, the bug would bite me again. And I would think, oh, no, that was just such an enormous mistake. I need to play again. I need to play some more. So believe it or not, music is on my mind almost constantly. And I think the one thing that I'm absolutely certain that people don't know about me, and I think we can file this under the heading of vulnerability, is that most nights I eat a bowl of cereal before I go to bed. Yeah.
Well, my husband does that most of the times too. So thank you.
I think that compulsion may be something that I inherited from my dad, although my dad would make it a bowl full of ice cream. And actually, I'll just share this with you. One time he had been out playing golf, and he came home and he told my mom that it felt like somebody was sitting on his chest. So she took him to the emergency room, thank goodness. And the next morning, they conducted a quintuple bypass on him. So afterwards, he had to meet with a cardiologist routinely, and they set him up with a nutritionist. So he's walking around the grocery store with the nutritionist, and she's telling him what he can't and can't eat. And he said, well, what about ice cream? And she said, yeah, you could have a half a cup of ice cream. And he's like, nope, that's not even a taste. So he dropped that one completely. But every night he would have a bowl of ice cream.
Mark, thanks for that. EPEC, that question you asked, the second one, is one of the five that you chose, Mark. So good synchronicity here. And a follow-up for that, is it the same cereal every night?
No. Actually, it all depends what Anne buys. When it comes to cereal, I don't discriminate. I mean, it's not junk like Fruit Loops or Captain Crunch or anything. It's usually pretty healthy.
Okay, I've got a follow-up for you, but I'm going to let Andy go there. Andy?
Well, I have 3 questions. Okay, so the first question is, do you want an easy question or a hard question?
Oh, no meatballs today. I'll take the hard one.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the stipulation that if I ask the hard one and you don't like it, we can do the easy.
Okay.
So the hard question is, what's the one thing in the world you hope nobody finds out about you?
Wow. I think, and it's because it was so incredibly stupid and thoughtless, foolhardy, and positively dangerous. I hope nobody ever finds out I blew up Keith Cirillo's locker.
Now I have another question. Who the hell is Keith Cirillo?
Oh, he's a kid I went to high school with.
Oh, wow. So I guess I had 4 questions.
Okay.
All right, so that was 3. And the 4th is, who loves you, baby?
You And Kojak.
Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you. I'm glad you're here.
Mark, I have a question for you, and this is not from me. This one actually came in from Carolyn Lebanowski in Portugal. She was desperate to be here today. She couldn't. She sent me 3 questions. I'm going to try and squeeze them in, but I promised her I would at least take them in order. So her first question to you: what is one positive character trait or life lesson that you learned from your dad that you have passed on to your sons?
Respect. Absolutely respect. I wrote a piece. I think I probably published it 2 years after he died, but it was about respect, and it was about respecting ourselves. This may not make sense, out of respect for others. And one of the examples I used, because my dad was a Marine, was polishing our shoes. And it was a ritual. And we had to put the polish on with our hands. Couldn't use a cloth, had to do with your hands, had to wait for the polish to dry, had to buff them with a genuine horsehair brush. And it took us a while to figure out that the whole point of that was to indicate to people that we cared about our own appearance, but we also cared about how we appeared to others. And being well dressed was a sign of respect for others.
Oh, great answer, Mark. That reminds me of that famous graduation speech given in the military. It's called "Make Your Bed." If you've ever heard that, just the same essence of what you're saying, but it starts with making your bed.
You know what? I got to tell you on that note, Dennis, that my first job out of high school, I know I've written about this, was as an orderly in a hospital. And the first time, I don't know if it was during my orientation, such as it was, but I had to make a bed. And whoever was with me said, "How do you know how to do that?" And I said, "My dad's a Marine." And they said, "Ah."
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Mark. Tony.
Well, Mark, it's an obvious one. I'd have to ask you about the music side of what you were saying. I've seen the guitars you have behind you when we're on the benches and things and stuff. So do you see it as times when you're kind of starved of inspiration to pick up a guitar, or do you go and listen to somebody else's music for inspiration?
Ooh, good question. I think at this point, only because I don't really have as much time as I would like to have. It's typically other people's music. And I rarely hear new music that moves me in any way. It's usually I'll go back to things that were probably popular when you and I were growing up. And there are still people from that time that I absolutely revere.
Who said anything about growing up?
What's that?
Who said anything about growing up?
Well, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean anything by that. Actually, I love to tell people that I have no intentions of growing up because there's no future in it. And you know what? I would also say that I wrote a piece once about an experience that started when I was 10 years old at a beach community where my parents would rent a cottage. And the first version of it was published on a site that no longer exists. It was called Connecticut Out and About. And it was published on that site. And somebody wrote a comment about appreciating my nostalgia. And that really struck me because it didn't feel at all like nostalgia. It just felt like a part of my life that's been absolutely consistent. And I said something at the end of the piece about the threads of my life being unbroken. So I feel the same way about that music, Tony. It's become part of me. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about new music, because there's 110,000 songs a day get uploaded to Spotify, and you kind of give up. I mean, when we grew up, I mean, the people I surrounded myself with, people who had similar record collections and stuff. But I don't think, sounds very nerdy, but I'm not ashamed to say, but I don't think it's like music to take you back to a time and a place. Now, there's a certain ingredient of nostalgia, but there's a certain kind of, I look out my window and think of things and big daft grin on my face, and I'm not ashamed of it. But music is, if I think it's really important, and if you're into sport, you don't remember where you were when a goal or touchdown or something go down, but everybody knows where they were. Well, at certain ages when John Lennon died and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And here comes Andy again.
Got 2 more questions.
The first time I only counted 2, so I thought you
No,
had
the
2
first
more.
was, do you want an easy question or a hard question?
Oh,
Then I asked the question. Then I asked who Keith Cirillo is. And then I asked who loves you, baby. 4 questions.
okay. Sorry, I lost count.
Now we have number 5, which is what's your favorite song?
Oh, that question I simply can't answer because it really, really depends.
Top 3.
I don't know. It really, it does. It depends on the day. It depends on what I'm feeling like. Depends on what my mood is like. I could probably give you a small handful.
Do you want to?
Sure.
There's another question.
There's one song in particular that never, ever fails to make me happy. And that's Earth, Wind, and Fire's Sing a Song. I think the only way I could listen to that without being happy is if I didn't have a pulse. This is going to sound absolutely nuts, but somebody in this conversation mentioned vulnerability. I don't know who that was. There was a record released, I think, in 1978, Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush live, and there is it's not actually played as a medley, but he plays this old blues song called King Bee, I'm a King Bee. And then he segues into a little section of another blues song called Backdoor Man. And when he finishes singing that segment, he turns on his wah-wah pedal and he rips off a solo that is so incredible that still there are days I can listen to that and just start crying.
Wow.
Because it's just so cathartic is the only word I can think about it. It's like it feels to me like there was nothing else at all he could have done in that moment except let that rip. And it's, unbridled is the word that comes to mind.
You're going to have to share the link after the...
Happily.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Awesome. I have another one unless... Well, Phil, is it okay? Okay. The next one is have you always been funny?
Honestly, I don't even think about that. I just typically just say whatever comes to my mind, and if it ends up being funny, I think of my grandfather O'Brien. That dude was the quintessential Irish character and storyteller. So I appreciate the question, but it isn't actually something I try to be.
Yeah.
If it works, fine. I'm happy about that, but it's not something I work at.
Good stuff.
Can I just tell you one quick grandpa story?
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I had a paper route. And I had a customer on my paper route named Dr. Pearson. That's how I knew him. So one day my grandfather found out that Dr. Pearson was a customer of mine. He goes, oh, yeah. That's my old buddy, Louis Pearson. I said, oh, okay. He said, when we were kids, he said, we had a double blind date. And he said it didn't take Louis long to figure out that his date wasn't too bright. So he said to her, do you mind if I ask you a question? And she said, no. And he said, how old are you? And she said, I'm 20. He said, could you explain to me how somebody could get so dumb in such a short time? That's not the whole story. There was a strip mall near where I grew up, and there was a Friendlies there, and all my buddies hung out at the Friendlies. So I happened to be walking over there one day, and I see this big crowd of kids, all my peers, and I'm thinking there's got to be a fight. So I go running over there, and I find Grandpa in the middle of the circle, and he's just over there telling stories, and he sees me. And, you know, at this point, I got hair like halfway down my back or whatever. And he goes, oh, hey, come here. And he pulls me into the middle. So he puts his arm around me and he says to all those kids, hey, do you know this guy? And they're all like, yeah, we know him. And he said to me, he said, this guy thinks he knows everything. So he said to me, how old are you? And I said, I'm 19. And he said, tell me, how'd you get so smart in such a short time? And he knew I knew the Louis Pearson story. Nobody else did, but they all still thought it was funny.
Oh, that's sweet.
He was the man.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, Phil, you're up.
Mark, I do love your sense of humor. So I want to say that to you.
Thank you.
Your story about polishing shoes resonates with me in this way. When I moved out of being in the field for Merrill Lynch and going into the corporate office, I knew that there were some people that would probably be paying attention to me. And there was this one particular gentleman. He was an EVP at this point. His name is Ed Goldberg. And Ed we always somehow in the mornings when we arrived, we'd get on the elevator at the same time. I didn't know that he was doing this. He would say, good morning, Phil. And then he would look down at my feet. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. And I happened to have a conversation with his executive assistant. And I said, I got a question for you. You've been working with Ed for a long time. Tell me, when we get on the elevator in the morning, he speaks and then he looks down at my feet. And she said to me, he's looking to see if you polish your shoes. So I thought, wow. But my question to you is this. I think it's Winston Churchill that said something about that we make a living by what we get and we make life by what we give. When you think about your life, past and present, what is it that you give all the time?
That's a great question. I would like to think, and this goes back to my dad, I would like to think it's acknowledgement. And what I mean by that is there are people who have said to me, do you really need to talk to everybody? And I try to, and that's not even fair. I like to. I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I worked at Travelers Insurance Company, regardless of what entrance you came into the building, there was always a security guard. So there was this one security guard. I'm guessing he was of Puerto Rican or Hispanic derivation. I don't know, but his name was Nelson. So I stopped to talk to him, and I told him that my middle name was Nelson, because that had been my maternal grandmother's maiden name. So we just kind of, kicked that off. So two things. One, I would stop to talk to him every time I came into the building. And some of the guys that I worked with would ask me, why do you always stop to talk to that guy? And I would ask them, why don't you? And then the other thing that happened was, we all had to wear these badges. So we had to show the badges when we came in. So somewhere along the line, I don't think I have it here, but I know where it is. Somewhere along the line, I came by a Batman credit card. Some guy thought he was onto a get rich quick scheme. So without checking with DC Comics, he made a whole bunch of these Batman credit cards. And then DC Comics showed up and said, no, you're violating the copyright. So he ended up with a warehouse full of these things that he couldn't use. But I don't know how I came by. I ended up with one. So I ended up substituting my traveler's ID with this Batman credit card. And every time I would walk by Nelson, I would just flash that and he would go, hey, Batman, and just let me in. And none of the guys that I worked with could ever figure that out. But my sense of that always was, why not? I mean, why wouldn't you acknowledge him? And also I got from my dad a respect for a job well done. This is connected to the shoe shine guy. Doesn't matter what the job is. If somebody does it well and does it with integrity, then you just admire and acknowledge that. And that guy Nelson was doing a great job. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, it does. I think one of the things that's really interesting to me about that is I think all of us on here, we have more in common than we have not. I'll put it that way. And so I just think it's innate. It's in your DNA to, let me rephrase that. It's innate, but I also think it's a superpower that you have. And I use the word superpower because I did this thing some time ago called Strength Finders. And it said one of my strengths was being a woo, and that's winning others over. And I could not really figure out in my younger years why it was so important for me to stop and have conversations with people. And what I figured out, and maybe you know this about yourself, is it's energizing. It literally energizes me to have conversations with total and complete strangers. So thank you for sharing that, and as a reminder to me.
And thank you, Phil. And I may end up appearing to contradict one of my responses to Andy, but I also love saying what at least start out to be unexpected things to people. Early in the history of my business, I went to a meeting, and one of the guys who was with me at the time was with me. He was from the Dominican Republic. I don't know if that affected the way he thought, but we walked into this building for a meeting, and I walked up to the receptionist. This guy always called me Chief. I don't know why, but I walked up to the receptionist and I said, "Hi, I'm Mark O'Brien. I'm here for my Brazilian bikini wax." and this guy whacked me, and he goes, "Chief, you can't say that." And the woman was laughing. And one other thing, everybody knows, we have a dog Eddie and a cat Sammy. And during COVID, when we took them to the vet, we'd have to pull in to a parking space, call the office, which was right in front of us, and tell them what parking space we were in. So I would pull into the parking space and I would call the number and I would say, "Hi, for example, I'm here to get my nose hairs permed." And the person on the other end would just say, "Oh, okay. Are you with Sammy or Eddie?" They would just know. So
I love that sense of humor.
It's just a thing.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Phil. Two questions here, Mark. Next one's up from Portugal. What's your favorite Batman movie and why?
I'm going to rate two equally. First, of course, is the 1989 Michael Keaton, Tim Burton movie, because in my mind at the time, somebody finally took Batman seriously. And I also love the fact that Tim Burton had to fight tooth and nail to get Michael Keaton in that role, because there was this huge outcry. No, that guy can't be Batman. and he was brilliant. And then my other favorite is the second of the three Christopher Nolan Christian Bale movies, The Dark Knight Returns, and it's the one in which Heath Ledger plays the Heath Ledger plays the Joker. That movie is just brilliant.
That is a classic. Thanks for that. Listen, I may have to turn off the recording. I just got a text from Ann with 10 open-ended questions for you.
Oh no. Uh-oh. Could you just text her back and tell her I surrender?
Right. I haven't seen you today.
Yeah. Okay.
Second question. This actually came through Carolyn, but it's on their list. It's one of your selections and it's borrowed right from James Lipton. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You did what you could.
Hmm. If you
I
could
think
answer,
that's
I'm
it.
going to borrow that one if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Hey, Richard, we're going to take Paul next since he hasn't gone yet. Thanks for your patience. Paul.
Oh, now I gotta ask him. No, am I ready? Shit. Um, actually, I got two, and all because you asked that other one there, Dennis. So now which one do I want to do first? I have
if
incessantly.
this helps at all, Paul, I have no idea what you're going to ask, so I'm going to be surprised by both of them.
True. Well, actually, this one the way you were talking about. You'll talk to anybody, and it has been a running joke in my marriage that I will talk to anybody. And my mom, my dad, you name it, that's what it was. So, where do you think you got that from?
My grandfather.
Yeah.
Oh, no question about that. He would talk to anybody. It's two things there's a million things I remember fondly, but I can remember being in grocery stores with him. And if he happened to see a woman, especially with twin boys, he would say to me, "Here comes double trouble." And then he would walk up to the lady and say, "Which one's Ike and which one's Mike?" And if he happened to see a woman in a supermarket with three boys, he would say, point at each of them, "Nick, a Dick, a Dominic." And he'd just do it and talk to anybody.
Paul, did you see two questions? Well,
I missed part of the answer because my computer froze.
okay.
Oh, the answer was simply put, the answer was, I get it from my grandfather. My grandfather would and did talk to anyone and everyone.
Okay, now my second one, which is one that I've always asked my more Christian religious clients. What if you found out about what in heaven, if you found out about it, would tell you, F this, I'm not going there? If you found out heaven was X, what would you say? Well, that ain't worth it. I'm out.
Wow, that's a good question. Probably that I wouldn't be allowed to say what I wanted to. Probably that everything would be just imaginably wonderful if I just followed the rules. That would not make me comfortable.
If you just followed the rules.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. And if I may, Paul, make of this what you will, I was thinking about you this morning because I sincerely hope you're okay.
Well, I'll figure it out and I hopefully will be okay. Well, actually, you know what? I'm here and that's enough, which makes me more than okay.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
If I flinch and make a weird face, it is the pain. It's not you.
I wouldn't take it personally anyway.
Boy. You must be used to that by now, Mark.
I am.
Okay, Richard.
Mark, knowing very little about you, and you say you have a wall of guitars behind you, which I have my own wall of guitars and have been pursuing music from grade 7. Just curious what role music has played in your life, just as a personal passion or possibly professionally, and what might be the most significant experience you've had with respect to your music.
Well, the fact is, I'm sitting where I am today because I believed that I was going to be a rock star. So it took me 10 years to get to college because I was pursuing that. My appreciation for it, my reverence for it, I might even go so far as to say my spiritual connection with it remains undimmed, obviously enough. But one of the more sobering realizations for me, which is part of the reason that I did end up going to school, is that, and maybe it was the places we were playing, I don't know, but playing 5 or 6 nights a week in the places that we were playing was a job, and it wasn't even enjoyable. So I thought, you know what, maybe I better open a few more options. And you know, I knew for a fact I was getting older. I knew for a fact I wasn't getting any smarter. And I just kind of figured out if I was going to do it then at 28, I better do it or I might not ever do it. So I did. But again, I haven't acquired the courage to sell my guitars.
Well, it was interesting that my job when I was, I guess, 19 was playing bass in a rock band. You're talking small town, but it doesn't diminish the I would say the purpose-built nature of music, that it just goes right into your soul and will pull out whatever happens to be within you at the time when you're playing, and when you're in that state of real-time consciousness where there's this incredible flow that's going on. And there was a lot of, I would describe as jamming or original music that you were so in the moment. And those are some of my most gratifying experiences, when the flow was so spot on with, could be anywhere, in the case of the rock trio, 3 people, the 3 of us, to a collection of 7 or 8 people, that everybody has their own role and contribution that they make to the composite, which has been a very gratifying experience. So
I think the term I would apply to that is sympathy. I don't know what else to call it, but I'll tell you this is going to be a bad paraphrase, I think. But Miles Davis once said that it's 1 in 50 performances in which you play completely out of your mind. But it's the other 49 by which you earn the right to call yourself professional. And I can remember those nights in which the band played completely out of its mind, and each of us was so sympathetic to the other that we were able to anticipate things. And you know, some of the moments that I remember most clearly are having somebody else in the band do something or play something and just looking over with a huge grin on my face in absolute astonishment, thinking, I can't believe you did that just then, because it was just so perfect and synchronous, I guess.
I'll add one one word for your sympathetic harmonics, is that in sympathy to the harmony of the inner spirit, we all vibrate when the harmonies or the sympathies are harmonic to one another. And the fact that you just mentioned looking over and seeing somebody, there was a band I was playing in. We had the honor actually of playing the first 3 Friday nights in Blues on Robson's Friday on in Vancouver. And like it was a real honor. It was the 3 opening sessions. And I can recall looking across to stage left to the lead vocalist and guitar player and songwriter. And like we were playing a song. It was written by somebody else, but he was just glowing like a light bulb. And it was interesting. Were we having more fun watching the people who were there who were grooving to the songs or them grooving to the music? It was just who was having more fun. And I just saw this incredible synergy between the band and the floor and dancing and just being in awe of the moves that some of the people had when they when they were taking in the music. So it's an amazing part of life, basically. Music has so many different forms it takes.
Absolutely agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Tony.
I
Tony,
think
Tony, you're muted.
okay.
From the beginning. Like every kid, no matter where you live, I think, you know, at 15, you want to be a rock star. But again, my aspirations being a rock star didn't last too long. It's just that I had the biggest room out of all of us to rehearse in. So I got the gig. But then you kind of grow up. But going on from, you know, the what Richard was saying about, you know, when you go and look back, do you look back on the nostalgic side of things, the people that you played with? Because I mean, just yesterday, Bruce Springsteen was 75 years old, and he wrote an entire album called "Letter to You" when he was looking back as the only surviving member of the musicians that he grew up with.
Yeah. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy named Bill Chinnock, Chinnnock. He was from, you know, the legendary Jersey Shore. He was Bruce Springsteen before Bruce Springsteen was. I used to see him at a place in Moodus, Connecticut, of all things. And in his band, he had Vinny Mad Dog Lopez, who had been one of Bruce Springsteen's drummers. He had Vladimir Sevchenko, who had been one of Bruce Springsteen's bass players. He had a guy that he always introduced as the king of the Hammond B3, Harry King. And he had a guy named Sam Hall on saxophone. That band was just incredible. Bill's no longer with us, unfortunately, but man, that guy was something.
I think I was just reading just yesterday, I think, that it was 50 years since the Stone Pony in New Jersey, and Springsteen played there, and I think Vinny Lopez played with him.
Not surprised. Yep.
Nice.
And I'll just throw this in there. I'm so incredibly grateful. I am now connected to Bill's son, William, who's in his last year of law school at Quinnipiac University here in Hamden, Connecticut. And I was able to connect with him because of a piece I wrote about Bill. I had met him a few times. I was with him in that place in Moodus on his 30th birthday. I got to see him play at Toad's Place in New Haven, which is still a pretty reputable venue. Amazing.
Thanks, Tony. Mark, this comes from one of the 5 questions that you selected.
Okay.
A genie shows up and gives you 3 wishes. What are they?
I think to be reasonably active and relevant till the end of my life. one of them has to do with money, I think. Somebody asked me once what I would do. Actually, it was Anne. There was some enormous Powerball drawing, and we don't ever play that. She said, "What would you do if you won Powerball?" And I said, "I wouldn't change a thing. I'd just sleep better and take less shit." And you know what? I don't know. I really don't know if I want to live forever, but if I could, I'd want to do it with Anne.
Ah, great answer. Anytime I've been asked that question, my first answer to the genie I want unlimited wishes.
Ooh.
All right, another one from your list. How do you spend your free time? I'm going to say besides eating cereal.
I actually spend as much of my free time as I can writing. And one of the 20 million or so reasons that I love Anne is that she never, ever says to me, "Why don't you just relax?" Because she understands that writing is as close as I'll ever get to meditation. And she understands that it's just something that I have to do.
Good answer. Another one from your selection. What are you reading right now?
Oh, right now, I'm trying to get through a book by a guy named Poe Bronson, and it has something to do with people who are working on a stock exchange. And I'm just having a really tough time with it. So while that's next to my bed, but while I'm up here, sometimes I don't know if you can see this. I cheat, and you can't see it. It's a book called "Gentlemen of the Road" by Michael Chabon, and I became a fan of his when I read his "The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay," which actually is sort of a fictionalized account of the early days of what became Marvel Comics, but it was before Marvel Comics. Jack Kirby was a part of that picture then, but prior to Stan Lee, the guy's name just went right out of my head. It'll come back to me. But Joe Simon, I think, was the writer. And I'll typically I'll typically alternate between something really serious and then something much lighter. So if I've read something really serious, I'm likely to read either Carl Hyacin or a guy named Tim Dorsey. Tim, I don't know what your preferences are, but Carl Hyacin and Tim Dorsey are both Florida natives, and they both revere the state, and they both absolutely disdain what's happening to it and its commercialization. In fact, if you have Apple TV, there is a serialized version of one of Carl Hyacin's books, first time, called Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn, and it's really, really good. One of Tim Dorsey's recurring characters is a guy named Serge Storm. His sidekick is a drunken stoner named Coleman, but Serge Storm, he's an environmentalist. He's a guy who actually one of his adventures had to do with Tom Petty. It's just incredible. But he's also a homicidal lunatic. And when he finds people that have done things that he doesn't appreciate, he finds the most incredible and bizarre ways to get rid of them. And I suppose you could call the humor dark, but those books, Tim Dorsey's books, are hilarious. Excuse me, and so are Carl Hyacin's, by the way.
Thanks, Mark. Paul, I think we got time for one more question, Paul.
Alrighty. You don't bring up Anne a lot. And so you said about just having her there for the rest, if you had to spend the rest of time and you could be eternal. And I love that. What is the best thing that she keeps present in you? And what's the thing she keeps about you from getting out and doing terrible things to the world?
Wow.
Or you don't have to answer that one if you don't
No,
want to.
I'm actually quite happy to answer it. This is going to go back to Richard's notion of intuition. Somehow Anne, who's entirely Italian, managed to intuit things. I don't know if I should say about Irishmen in general, but certainly about this one. And among them are, if you ever want to make sure an Irishman never does anything, tell him he has to do it. Or if you want to be positive that an Irishman will do something, tell him he can't. Either he's not capable or he doesn't have the ability. And she figured that out. I was living in a house down near the Connecticut shoreline when we met. It was a big house, a beautiful house. I have no idea how she separated me from my ego to get me to move from that place, but she did. And I never even perceived it happening. And I would also tell you that I was in a relationship before I met Anne that turned out to be an absolute disaster. And the person was a legit con artist. And I got taken in ways that I just shouldn't even admit. But when I met Anne, as soon as I looked in her eyes, I knew there was nothing like that in there. And they were sort of glowing from within. And one time we went to a farmer's market in South Windsor where we used to live. And a chiropractic office had a little kiosk thing set up there. And they had this weird scale that had kind of a platform for each foot. And when you got on it, it showed you that you don't balance your weight equally. So I got on there and I was astonished at how off balance I am. And the kid who was running the kiosk asked Anne if she wanted to get on it. And he looked at her, and then he looked at me, and then he looked at me again, and he said, "Did you see her eyes?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? What do you think I'm doing here with her?" So I hope that's an answer to your question, Paul. But yeah, so sometimes you just don't even need to or want to define it. But Anne is it, and Anne has it. And maybe the way in which she keeps me from doing reprehensible things is just by respecting me so much. I figure, well, dang, I might as well respect myself.